Well, Josh, it's great to get to chat to you again. And this time around, I'm not just going to like bring up a bunch of your old content and just disagree with you on it like I did last time. Although that was still one of my favorite chats ever, and I ended up agreeing with you on practically everything by the end of it. So that was fun. This time around, I want to kind of delve a lot more into a few things. Really, kind of looking at the work you do now. But before that, could you give us like a little rundown of how you got where you started on your mental health journey and how that led you to where you are now? And you can take as long as you want on that, because I know it's not a short story.
I'll just take up the whole hour just telling
sweet.
you that. Where did it start for me? It started, I guess, it actively started for me when I stopped drinking. Now, the reason I say actively is because I do think that when I look back at when I was like 12 years old and I started drinking in the way that I did, I do believe that was, probably more like the real beginning of me trying to go on a healing journey, because that was me looking for something, right? Trying to find a solution. And but actively thinking, right, I really need to look for a better way of life happened after I stopped drinking. So I stopped drinking in 2012. So over 10 years ago now. And what happened for me when I stopped drinking is that I really, really struggled. So everything that I'd ever ran away from came flooding back, right? And so I found, although it felt amazing to stop drinking, it also felt awful, and I didn't know what to do without it, and I couldn't deal with life. And so I very seriously planned to not be here anymore when I was about 9 months sober. And I had a weekend with my children that changed everything for me. And it was from that weekend really that I really wanted to start to question and understand, right? Question so that I could understand why I felt the ways that I did and why I seemed to struggle with my life so much. And I think, the 10 years that have followed, that curiosity has kind of been at the heart of what I do. And I think me and you are quite similar in that way, right? We sort of take concepts or ideas or when something becomes quite common and everyone's saying it, we have this thing about us where we go, let's really question that and get curious about whether that's true. I see you doing that a lot.
I was going to say, the funny thing is that we had a podcast of me. You're actually probably the content creator on the internet that I agree with the most, and yet we had a podcast where I deliberately disagreed with you. I do love your approach to that, and that is actually going to come up in one of the questions in a very short time. But sorry, continue.
No, but it's that level of curiosity, that's that kind of willingness to be wrong, and that it's not just my curiosity. I've always been, throughout my whole life, even when I was a kid, I was always a bit of a rogue. I always wanted to go against the grain. I always asked questions that I purposely asked in school to try and tie the teacher up in knots that I knew that they might not be able to answer. So there's a bit of that in there, like, as well. But it served me really well because I think it's helped me to get closer to making sense of why I struggle in the ways that I do. And so the journey for the last 10 years has really been about that. And then I realized that people were quite interested in the questions that I ask. And that's what I like to think, Dave, about what I do, is that I don't give answers necessarily in the work that I do. I just ask questions, right? And I always say to people, don't ask me, I don't know what the answer is, but I can ask some really good questions that make us go, oh, I don't know, right? And that's the journey that I've been on, really. And I guess in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I've gone into doing this full time, and I get to, do it in some pretty amazing and fun places.
Yeah, I'm not jealous of half of your appointments whatsoever. Those are my questions to ask you offline later. I'm like, how do I get some of those gigs that you've got? But yeah, that's
LinkedIn is the answer.
I hate LinkedIn.
I know, man, but it's the answer. And by the way, treat it the same way that you treat any other platform.
Yeah.
and you'll do well on there.
Yeah.
You'll do well because of your curiosity. So
All right. Yeah. I did try. It's the one. It's weirdly this of all the social medias. It's the one I never really fully went in on. Okay. I think I went in on it for about 2 months, and I was just like, yeah, I'm bored of this now. And because like every single connection that I got through LinkedIn was someone that wanted to sell me something, and it was very rarely someone that wanted me to do anything or to be part of anything. And it was like, and I was getting sort of like 10 people that wanted to be, I want to 6x your number of clients for you. Like I was getting 10 times more of that on LinkedIn than I was on Instagram. And I was just like,
yeah.
and it just felt like, and I actually have the exact same issue in face-to-face business meetings. And I did it at TwitchCon this year as well. So I stream all of this live on Twitch now, and so I went off to TwitchCon this year, and I learned something very important there, is that most content creators don't want to meet you, they want you to meet them. Which is a slight difference in the fact that, you know, everyone really is just waiting for their turn to tell them about you, tell you about them. And that's one thing that I really struggle about. Like, I think, you know, as a kid, I was like often told that I talk about myself too much or anything like that. So now when it comes to those meetings, there's still a little bit of an internalized guilt there of like, you know, I don't know how to act in a networking meeting, and I'm like, am I talking about myself too much? Am I not talking about myself enough? I don't know. But before we turn this into, like, you've somehow managed to make this a therapy session for me. I'm not quite sure how that happened. But what I want to kind of dig into, I was going to ask this question much later on, but it kind of came up in what you've just said there, when you said about the alcohol being, you know, it like if you actually trace it right back to being 12 years old, the alcohol was actually an attempt at making a journey. And this is one of the things that I do find very fascinating about what you talk about, because similar to me, I don't ever refer to things as negative coping strategies or positive coping strategies. I refer to them as slingshots and boomerangs. A boomerang is something that takes you forward only to take you further back. So drinking, for example, gives you something before it takes away. Drugs give you something before they take away. Credit cards, caffeine, all these things give you something first and then they take away. And real change comes from what I call a slingshot, which is take something from you before it gives back. So, you know, a boomerang going forward and then backwards, a slingshot going backwards and then forwards. But you did a post about 4 weeks ago, and I actually agree with it. I'm not going to pick it apart, I promise. But I want to kind of delve into it, where you talked about basically essentially anything as a form of escaping from the feelings and actually sitting with the feelings rather than using any coping strategy whatsoever, even a more positive coping strategy. Is this post ringing any bells? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, but I mean, I know that I talk about this sort of stuff a lot. Yeah. Oh, what? Wait a minute. Is it addiction's not stigmatized, that one?
Maybe. I wish at the time I was like, I need to ask him about this when we speak. But I mean, it's something that I listened to Anna Lemke's book, Dopamine Nation, and a lot of that she talks about the fact that the idea of every time we're pushing on the pleasure side of things, we're setting ourselves up for like the seesaw going the other way and pain coming back. And actually, she talked a lot about sitting with the emotions and understanding that you can just sit through them, and that being a form of resilience and such. And you made a post sort of similar a few weeks back saying that, like, even the more positive strategies that people think of sometimes, are they just a form of escapism as well?
Yeah. Well, look, I think in a lot of times they are. So there's a term, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term spiritual bypassing.
No. Or
So,
if I have, it was you that said it.
yeah. So you've got spiritual bypassing or emotional bypassing, which is when you do something that's, you know, that's positive or seen as positive, but it's a way of emotional avoidance.
Okay.
Yeah. So I often, like, a good way of like giving you an example of this is a lot of people in the space that we operate in, or that I operate in, right, and that we both operate in, will sort of say, you know, you shouldn't be posting like topless, like washboard abs pictures, because, you know, it can be shaming and all that kind of stuff. But there are times when I post my content for the same reason that somebody's doing that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's times when I post content because I feel shit and I want somebody to make me feel better. Sorry, I shouldn't swear.
You can swear on this, it's fine.
Okay, cool.
Swear away.
Okay. Yeah, well, I should effing no.
Yeah.
But there's times when I do that, right? And there's times when I do things that everybody else might see as being good, but I'm doing it because I don't like the ways that I feel and I want to escape myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, you know, it's wrong to just think of addiction as like the bad. I mean, I love what you just said, really, the boomerang thing. Yeah. Because ultimately, you know, if I'm doing, if it's social media or it's whatever it might be, right? Helping people, another prime example.
Yep.
Yeah. Helping people, helping people, helping people. If I'm helping people at the expense of being with my wife and my children, well, that's not a good thing,
Yeah.
right? It's not a good thing. Now, I could dress it up as I'm just selfless and I want to give all of my time. But hang on a minute. If my children are not getting as much of their dad as they need and deserve,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then I am using it in what is a problematic way, and I'm trying to escape, you know, some other struggle. So I think we have to um recognize that and notice, why am I doing this? What am I driven by? Right. And I think what you start to realize is that everything that we do, we can fall into doing it as a way of escape. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, oh no, absolutely, and definitely, I'm familiar with those kind of posts as well. As like sometimes, a few years back, I was only posting the positive of what was going on in my life and stuff, and because you know, when you get into any sort of industry, you kind of think that's what people want to see, and
Yeah.
they want to see that everyone wants a results-based coach. And to be fair, if I'd have carried on just talking about mindset and not mental health, I'd have probably got away with it, because when you just talk about mindset, you're really talking to that. I call it the shrinking middle class of motivation. You're talking to the person that's already kind of motivated and just wants a little bit more. And the reason I call it the shrinking middle class is because that motivation helps this person up and it helps this person go further down. It can be quite ableist in nature a lot of times. And
I
yeah,
love your mind, man.
thank
You
you.
say the same things that I say.
And so yeah, I one day decided, you know what, I've been holding back my what's really going on with me and like the sad side of things, and I've not been fully authentic with my audience, because I've just basically, if I've gone through a depressive period, I've just gone quiet until I'm okay again, and
Yeah.
and I decided to openly just share like a post. It was like November or December, because I was still working in the gym at the time, and I know in the post I had my little woolly hat on to keep warm and stuff, and I posted it and it got a humongous response. Now I was like, the adult emotionally intelligent side of my brain was like, that's cool, it resonated with a lot of people, I probably helped a lot of people with that authenticity. And then I don't know if you've probably come across Steve Peters and the chimp paradox and stuff. It's like the chimp side of my brain,
Yeah.
or the more basic side of my brain was like, and it got loads of likes. And then about 6 months later, I had another emotional dip, and I thought, well, maybe I should post about this. And then my brain stopped me. Like the adult, you know, slightly more educated side of my brain said, "Are you posting this because you think it will help people, or are you posting it because you know you'll get all those likes, and all of those likes will be good and it'll make you feel good?" So I decided to actually write the post and not post it till I was already feeling better, and say, this is what I was feeling a few days ago. I wanted you to have the perspective of this, but I didn't want to I didn't want to post it just for the sake of giving myself a little dopamine hit, because again, that wasn't me. That was me, another way of me trying to avoid those feelings. Really, I masked it up as, I'm doing this for other people, and I was just like, are you though? Like, so when your post came up about that, I was like, I can't. I wish I'd saved it, and so I could say which one it was. It was a video, because they're all videos now. It used to be, I'll save one of your quotes, and that was easy to keep because I had an entire folder of your quotes last time around. But it's because they're videos now, because that's what you need to do on social media. But yeah. But this kind of, the reason that question was supposed to be originally fair for Ron, because I think it does tie into very much what you teach in fair. You know, the phrase that is often associated with you right now is rewriting resilience. It's like, what does that phrase mean to you?
I think, look, people often mistake resilience. Some people get uncomfortable with the word even, right? And say, I don't like resilience. I've had people tell me I need to be that all my life, right? And
Yeah.
I understand what they mean. But the reason I say rewrite it is because for me, resilience isn't about keep going forward and keep crashing on all at the expense of yourself, no matter what. Resilience is much more about what you just did, right? Which was a level of self-awareness where you picked apart what, before you took an action, you said, right, let me just evaluate myself. Let me check in with who I am. What do I need in this moment and what's right for me? Right. I could do with writing out what's going on in my mind, but actually the act of posting it wouldn't be what I need right now. And so really, you know, call that, you know, resilience in the sense that it's about understanding who I am and understanding myself on a deep enough level to make sure that I know how to get my needs met. And I think that's way more inclusive and is something that we can all do, and something that we can, without being too cheesy, a journey that we can all find ourselves on, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, resilience, as you said, then it is stigmatized, and it's because there's that argument between should we endure what we're experiencing, or should we endure the world more, or should the world be kinder to us? And people ask that as if it's an either or question. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
and in reality, it's a yes. We should, and therefore resilience being a tool that in an ideal world we wouldn't need, but we always would, because our struggles are relative. So if we were suddenly in a utopian society tomorrow, we'd find something new to struggle about. That's why I think a lot of people are like, well, yeah, I've been told to be resilient. It's like, resilience was often wrapped up in man up, just get over it, pull yourself together, those type of lovely phrases.
Yeah, and there is a like a there is nuance to that, and you're right, and there's part of me that thinks like the whole plan against people struggling should not be to go into schools and teach every child how to be resilient. Although I think we should do that, right? That should also be partnered with making sure children get what their right to what they need and deserve in their life, and everybody should have equal opportunity. Something that I don't believe remotely happens in our society, right? So if you just go whole in on resilience, that's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong. It shouldn't be like that. So, like you said, the answer is yes, right? Should we be more resilient, or should we create a world where you don't have to be resilient? But what I would say is that, and by the way, did you just hear my dog barking like crazy?
No,
we glossed. Oh, okay.
You've got really good. You've got much better sound relief than I do, because if anything that happens in this room or in this house or vicinity gets picked up, because I've got like a very sensitive microphone that was used to be used for recording in soundproof rooms. You see, it picks up everything.
Yeah. No, I didn't hear it. Parcel came. My wife's out. The dog's going crazy. Anyway, To bring it back to what you were saying, in the perfect world or the ideal world, we say that you wouldn't have to be resilient, but actually that's probably not true either, right? Mm-hmm. Because in the ideal world, if we got rid of every difficult emotion, then good emotions and pleasant emotions wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Because it would just plateau to all being very the same.
Yeah.
So it's almost dysfunctional, and actually, in some ways, it's part of the problem to think that we shouldn't need resilience, because what we do is we try and sweep, and this happens, right? We try and sweep everything under the carpet and just make sure everybody's okay and all right all of the time, and that causes problems, because everyone has to start pretending that they're all right.
When you've been talking about it, then the thought that should come to mind is that resilience is like having insurance. It's like, we don't want the accident to happen. We don't want the incident to happen. We don't want the flood to happen, or the car crash to happen, or anything like that, the roof to fall in. But if it does happen, you're covered.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So the stuff where you've moved into with your work now, so I keep on meaning to be like, I just should sign up for one of these, because they look amazing what you're doing at the moment. The sort of is it entirely men, or just mostly men that you're working with at the minute? Is it?
So this is the thing. I do a men's event once a month.
Yeah.
That is anyone that identifies as a man only. And then everything else I do is mixed. Yeah.
Okay. So the men's events, it's again, this is rewriting resilience. This is understanding what, it's helping men be in touch with the full range of their emotions, and it's using things like breathwork and such, right? How did you get into that specific, like what was it that came to you thinking, right, I know what this event's going to be, I know where these are the things that I've learned, these are the things that I've experienced, and I know that this will make a great event. What was the birth of that event?
So I started working with a couple of guys, Rob and Mark, from a company called That Day, and I was doing some work with them, and they were like, look, we can get hold of this venue in London, would you like to do a men's event? And at first, I'll be honest with you, I was like, no, not really. I was scared that nobody would turn up, right? And I was sort of comfortable in the bubble of doing the work that I did. And but I said, look, let's do it. In the end, we said, let's do it. Let's just put it on and we'll see how many turn up. And what I've always been really passionate about is like you see a lot of the men's work online. I have to be really careful in the way that I say this because I don't want to sound like I'm like dissing it or putting it down. I think it's amazing.
I know this feeling. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
right.
want to tell everyone that I'm the best, but I don't want to make anyone else feel like they're second best.
And also, if you say to somebody, I didn't want to do it like that, people will often hear like that is rubbish, which is not what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You're
I
think we're just trying to fill a gap that we create the art that you want to see, basically. That like a musician, it's a musician saying, I don't want my stuff to sound like the Foo Fighters doesn't mean that the Foo Fighters are shit, you know. It's like it means they want to fill a gap that they want to create the art that they want to witness themselves.
Exactly. If I said I want lights like yours, Dave, right, but I want mine to be blue and not purple, that wouldn't mean
I can make them blue if you want. But
no, because it would be because you're purple, right? You're purple. That's the thing. Anyway, I see a lot of like, oh, there we go. Oh no, it looks better as purple, doesn't it?
Well, it looks different as purple. I like combination of purple and teal's quite nice. But anyway,
no, purple for me. Anyway,
there we go.
I see a lot of the men's work out there, and I think it's amazing, right? But some of it feels very unreachable for the average person on the street, right? There's a lot of like, I don't know, shoes and socks off, walking around a campfire, wearing a poncho, all that sort of stuff. Again, I think it's brilliant and I love it and I'm into it, but I don't think it's reachable for the average person. So what I wanted, what we built this off the idea was, men, generally speaking, only come together for like sporting events, funerals, weddings, and a drinking session. Yeah. So I wanted something, or all three of us together wanted to create something where men can come together, right? But it's built around checking in with each other and maybe letting go of some stuff. And that's it. No, I didn't want any other intention. You don't have to come and do deep work. None of that. You just come, right? It's a bit of a social event for a couple of hours, but it's built around emotional release because as a little bit of like, to give you a bit of context, people always say to me, men don't do emotions, right? Mm-hmm. Or men find it really hard to do emotions. And I say, that's not true, right? That's not remotely true. If you go to a football match, you'll see thousands of men going through every single range of emotion. And not only will they easily express them, they'll find it very difficult to hold them in. So so they do, but you need to create the space that makes them feel comfortable. And so that's what we wanted to do with Uncommon Man. And so what it is space for 2 hours. We serve non-alcoholic beer, so people can still have feel like they're having a bit of a drink in a social. We put like this emotional wheel on the wall, and every man just checks in what word's coming up for you: anxious, overwhelmed, worried, fearful, angry, all of that. Then we send everybody off in twos or normally groups of three, and they get 5 minutes each to share why that word come up for them, and the other two men will listen. And then we finish with a big emotional release breathwork session, which finishes with a big sort of primal scream. And so we do a little bit of chatting, speaking and listening, and then a little bit of emotional release. And we did it for the first time in November last year, and it's just sort of took off really and gone from strength to strength.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So with it having that sort of set format, like, do you find that do people, do you have like a kind of rotating group of people that come, or is it the same people that you see coming back and back again? You know, what is it, people that come to one session and then like, okay, or is it people that come for that release once a month?
So there is a core of men now that come for the release once a month. The capacity at the venue is 35 people. It's a lovely venue in London. There's a rooftop terrace on there right in the city of London. It's in the centre. And so we have a core, I would say they're about 50-50 now, of brand new people and people that come every month. And we have, like a WhatsApp group. So all the men are in the WhatsApp group, and if you've been before and you're signed up to like the mailing list thing, we release the tickets for, I think it's 48 hours to people that have been before, so in case they want to sign up, and then they go on general sale straight after that. And it's not, every space is normally taken up within a couple of days of it going out. So yeah, there's a lot of men who come every month, pretty much. Yeah. So
what was your personal entry into the world of breathwork, and as well as like what was the actual thing that got you started with it, but what were some of your early experiences with it? Like, was it something that surprised you? Was it something that you looked at from the outside and thought, like, this will never work, or is it something that you were quite open to? Like, what was that
Yeah.
process like for you?
It massively surprised me what happened. So you got this. Everyone talks about meditation, right? And I don't want to be too controversial here again, but I'll just say it. Say it as I see it. You get it anyway. So, um, when I was trying to do meditation throughout like the last 10 years, right? Everybody talks about meditating, right? But what I found, I go to people and I would say, listen, I'm trying this meditation thing and I can't do it, man. Every time I close my eyes and start trying to slow my mind down, it goes crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody seemed to be able to tell me anything. Everyone would be like, "Oh, it's a personal experience. I just do." And like I started to get to the point where I think a lot of people are lying and don't really do this. And so and just say they are. And so then I was in the sauna. I used to do it in the sauna every time. Because what I do is I used to go in the sauna and I thought, I'll stay in here for 20 minutes in the sauna and I will, because I'm in here and I know the time is on, I'll just sit in here and I'll focus on my breath and do this meditation. And I had a massive experience one time. Like, and I'm telling you, it's like an out of body experience. And I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. What transpired is that because it was hot in there and I was focusing on my breath and I sort of lost myself, I started doing a conscious connected breathing pattern.
Yeah.
And it was from that really that I then went on and was like, this could be incredible, the impact it had on me. And I'll tell you why, because I'm very good at talking about what's going on for me without ever actually having to feel it. I'm a very good patient if I do one-to-one, any kind of one-to-one therapy.
Yeah.
If somebody says to me, and how did that make you feel? I know how it should have made me feel. And I know how to say it in a way that's going to make the person that's asking me think really good answer. He's really thought about that. And he's really, gone into it when I haven't at all. I've said all the right words and completely avoided ever having to feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so breath work takes that away. And if you do this breathing pattern that we do for long enough, I guarantee you will have an experience. I guarantee it. And it's really, I mean, I don't just do it at the men's group. I do them online as well. And it's part of the program that I run and stuff like that. But I mean, I did the first online mixed group session last year and it had 79 people sign up for it on Zoom. And I did one last month online and it had 1,200 people sign up. So it shows you how much it's grown in a year.
And I was like, must click that link, and then never did.
Oh, you got to come and do it, man. You've got to come and do the next one.
I absolutely 100% want to. And it's been something that I've been meaning to do for quite some time because I thought, you know what, I was always going to get you on and talk about it, and but it's something obviously I want to come and experience for myself. So I will definitely do it. I don't know if the next one because I think I'm away when the next one's on. But if I haven't done one by like, I don't know, February or something, then I want you can tell everyone on social media to cancel me or something because that's
if you haven't done one of my online sessions by February,
I will do an online one before February. There we go. But if I want to come and do I want to come and do the in the room.
Well, you want to come to the one in London?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you haven't come to the one, so February is the last opportunity for you to come to one in London.
Otherwise, I'm not welcome.
You have to do it. You have to do it live on your Twitch.
That's not a threat. I would do it live on my Twitch. That's not a threat. That's free content for me. How is what like that's like?
But it makes you cry and everything.
Yeah. Oh, there's my stream room. This is the most important thing in my stream room. I have a box of tissues right under my monitor for reasons. but I used to say it was for 2 reasons, and I was like, one was for crying on stream, and I'm like, and one other reason, and then everyone was like thinking it was something rude, and I was like, no, it's blowing me nose, you bunch of perverts. So now I say it's for 3 reasons, just to help the degenerates have a joke. So outside of these sessions, what is the rest of your work look like?
So it's probably you could split it pretty much in 2. So I have like the corporate work that I do. Actually, no, you might have to split it in 3. So I have the corporate work that I do. So I work with some organizations. I work with them once a month in a sort of like group coaching way. Other organizations, I will go in and do like one-off sessions, like in-person workshops or online workshops. And then I regularly try and get into schools as like probably twice a month, if I can. And then I have like my group online program that I do. So I regularly run this 6-week online program.
Yep.
And I'm just in the third cohort of that this year. So I've run that 3 times this year. So yeah, that's like the three: schools, corporate, and yeah, the person to person work, if you call it that.
So what age range are you working with in schools?
So I was at school yesterday working with year sixes.
Okay,
So
so yeah,
like age
10.
10.
Yeah.
I've done year threes and fours.
Yeah.
It's the youngest I've ever done. But mainly I would say like senior school.
Yeah.
Most of what I do is senior school.
And what is like the aim of the sessions when you go into as young as that, like, primary school or even secondary school?
Just helping people to understand. I say that their behavior is often a reaction to the ways that they're feeling. So I'm quite big on, we tell kids that you can be anything that you want to be. All you got to do is put the effort in, right? And I say that's kind of true, but it's also true that the environments that you exist in are going to play a big part in what happens to you.
Yeah.
And so, how do you try and put some stuff in place to be able to counter that, and just get them to understand that they're allowed to feel the ways that they feel, and just because somebody else isn't feeling the ways that they feel, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be feeling it, and just sort of normalizing that stuff really, and letting, I share a lot about how and why I struggled in school, and I struggled in school a lot because I was overwhelmed a lot. I was emotionally overwhelmed, and so, before I started senior school, that meant crying a lot. And then when you get to senior school, I'll say it as I believe that it is. I wish it wasn't like this, but you certainly, as a boy, I couldn't cry at senior school. So the tears turned to anger because it was safer. I had to be angry because I weren't crying at senior school. And so, yeah, it's just trying to get these young people to make sense of who they are, really.
Yeah. For you, what are some of the core differences between working with children and working with adults?
The children teach me what to say to adults. I mean, I'm not even joking either.
Oh no, I'm with you.
Do you know what I mean? It is. There's a lot of that. What are the core differences? The kids will say it as it is, so I'm always a little bit more nervous when I go and work with young people, because I think, at least if I'm working with adults, if they think it's rubbish, they'll pretend they think it's good until I'm gone, and then they'll slag me off behind my back, which is fine by me because I don't know what's happening. Whereas kids, if they're bored, they'll let you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect to it. But also, particularly senior school level, I think they're really receptive to it.
Yeah.
When they feel like they can trust you. And so, yeah, the difference is with a lot of adults, and it's changing, because if I say adults over 35, you have to do quite a bit of work to break them open and to get them to even be open to having the conversation. But then probably under 35, it's a lot easier and they're a lot more receptive. So yeah, I guess.
Do you think that's an age thing, or do you think that's because people under 35 have had more of their adult life in a world where people are actually outwardly talking about this stuff and trying to break down the stigma?
My knee-jerk reaction is to say to you, because they're from a different generation, right? So they've had more time, and people are talking about it a lot more. I think that's probably the main reason. And I think life can beat you down. And do you know what I think? I think a lot of people, and this isn't to go political, but I think a lot of people start off at like 18, 19. They start off adulthood, like being really, really left-leaning, right? And really liberal. And then I think life pushes you towards being a little bit, our society does, not life. Western culture society, sort of neoliberalistic society, pushes you towards the other end to be a bit more just worry about yourself and who cares about anybody else. And so I think, our culture does that to people. So I think there's a bit of that in there.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense, yeah. I would say that I see that more in people substantially older than 35. I would say, yeah, I have, but then I'm a northerner, so we're all a bit left up here. But,
yeah. You're probably right. I probably got the age a little bit wrong.
Well, yeah, but no, what you said before about the kids teach you how to work with the adults is funny because so my primary job now is working with a local NHS trust where we go. Originally it was me going into schools, 5 different schools a week and doing talks, and now I'm training the teachers in those schools to be able to give the same talks. Wow. And then the idea is once we've done that with all the schools in our county to move to another county and do it. So, but because the person I work for is the head of the South Cumbria and Lancashire county, he was like, we did this session yesterday to like 35 trainee associate psychologist practitioners, I believe they're called, TAPS apps, and he was like, we could do this stuff for adults, couldn't we? And I'm like, yeah, we use the adult stuff to write the stuff for the kids, and the kids have refined the stuff so that we could actually now better speak to the adults. And in fact, some of the stuff that I put in for the teenage kids has come from some of the works we do with the preteen kids and the primary school kids. And yeah, the way they respond to it, like you said, you get that instant feedback. So you're more likely to actually get, okay, that point doesn't land very well there. And you could say, oh, it's because of their age or whatever. And actually, I think it's just because of that honesty or that kind of, a little bit more transparency about how they're feeling. Whereas adults a lot of times will just sit in a room and just almost give you nothing back. And I really hated that during the Zoom era because no response. I used to just look straight into this camera and pretend it was a really happy smiley face looking at me the whole time, because everybody on Zoom's just like, I'm just like sat like this and chilling, got a cup of tea, legs crossed, arms crossed, all of that stuff. So there's a question I've been posted. We have a lot of advocates in our community. And anyone who advocates for anything, whether it be mental health, whether it be racial equality, like gender equality, anything like that, I'm loving asking this question at the minute, which is, if your advocacy was to suddenly be like 100% complete, everything you're advocating for was done, what are 3 ways that the world would be different?
Oh, I've got to try and answer this without being too controversial.
Or just be controversial.
Big Pharma wouldn't run the mental health conversation, and people would have people would have final and the majority say in making sense of their distress and their pain, however they see fit, rather than single models that we're told that we have to accept.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I think everybody in our chat will agree with you, so it's okay. You're not being too controversial, at least for the audience so far. I know that's
hot when I was saying that.
Hey, look, we talked about paedophilia a couple of weeks back, so trust me, you're not as in the hot seat as that guest was.
All right, well, they'd be gone as well in my.
Well, yeah, it's not something we're specifically advocating for, but yeah, let's. But yeah, they'd be gone.
People would be able to make sense of their pain. Community would come back.
Love it.
Because I think it's gone. And actually, I'm not sort of, I was going to say stroking your back. That's not the term, is it?
I'm not sure what
I'm not sure what's nice to somebody.
Blowing smoke up your ass.
Right, yeah, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass, but I do genuinely things like what you're doing here, I think are very much the future of what community is. Mm-hmm. When I go into schools, right, one of the things that because I often ask what sort of things do you do to look after yourself? Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of them will say online gaming, and a lot of adults will put that down. But there's a level of anonymity that's really beneficial, and there's a level of it not just being a direct conversation, but they're gaming, and so they can get lost in talking. And so, like, I think community will never be like it once was.
No.
And so we have to look at ways in which community exists in the world in which we live in today. So community will come back, and it will look wholly different. And I do genuinely believe, what you're doing, that kind of thing is at the forefront of that. So people making sense of their pain, and you wanted 3 for me, didn't you? Community would come back, and at the center of every school would not be the idea that children's value will, their value will only be of any value in the world if they pass every test and do really well at school. Schools will be around helping people develop emotional capacity to discover their value. That might sound dramatic, but I don't think it has to be that dramatic. So that would be the 3. That would be the 3 things.
Okay. I'm going to pick one of those, which is the third one, because that one's actually, for me, is the most interesting one to get my teeth stuck into. What are some ways that we, and this could be for adults, this could be for children, I think it's basically all of us, but what are some ways, and I think your work directly leans into this as well, not leans into this, does this deliberately. What are some ways in which we do need to maybe reassess our emotional intelligence, or or what are some ways in which we could achieve that third goal, where we are looked after as a more emotionally well-rounded individual?
So first, we have to allow space for people to have their emotions. Yeah. So I think if you grow up in an environment that's difficult, and I do this all the time, right? I go and speak to people that work with children, and they're like, just be careful what you say. I don't know if we really want to talk. There's going to be a few children in there who have got alcoholic parents themselves, right? So I think you should maybe not talk too much about your dad being an alcoholic. And I'm like, surely I should talk more about it.
Yes.
And they're like, well, we're a little bit worried about what it might do to them. And, we don't know if we want to bring it up. And I'm like, well, someone better bring it up. Yeah. Because, when you grow up with that discomfort and you grow up in your life with struggle, I think all the humans around you are all a bit nervous and worried about bringing it up. And I yearned all my life for somebody to just call what my experience was, call it clearly. People say to me, don't use the word alcoholic even, it's stigmatizing. And I'm like, my dad was an alcoholic, and I wish somebody would have just said it when I was a kid, rather than pretending that he wasn't. And that, wow, he's just, he struggles a little bit. And like, no, tell me the truth, and then support me in feeling the resulting feeling.
Yeah.
That's what we don't do. And that's what we need to do. So the way that you do that, I think most teachers, I say most because it's not all of them, right? There are bad teachers. There's bad people in every profession.
Yeah.
Most teachers are in the business because they intuitively know what children want, and they want to love and support them.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they do it.
Yeah.
Because it ain't for the hours or the money. Because we exist in a culture for some reason that doesn't seem to want to make being a teacher one of the most prestigious jobs, when it should.
Yeah.
It should be that. The people that are looking after and building our children should be that, but they're not.
Yeah.
So if you're in it, it's because you love kids. And then what happens is we tie their hands behind their backs with all this academic crap, which is what it is, right? Because anything that you can learn anything online now, by the way, right? The world's different now.
Yeah.
The world's different. Yeah. I when I was a kid, I used to say, I don't need to learn maths now because I'll have a calculator. And they used to say, well, you won't be able to carry one around with you everywhere, will you?
And
you're like,
hey.
so look, and look where I am. Yeah. So the world's changed.
It's like I've got an encyclopedia in my pocket now, not a calculator.
Well, exactly. And not to forget that most children that are starting senior school now, going into year 7, or not most, but a lot of them will leave school to go into a job that doesn't even exist yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's how quickly the world's moving.
Yeah.
So we're naive if we think we can teach them what they need to know, because we don't even know what they're going to do. So I don't, you look at things like SATs. I don't think we should be testing the shit out of kids. Right? I don't think we should be doing it. Not, and SATs are, to check that the teachers are doing what they're supposed to be doing, really. And so we shouldn't do that. And what we should do is give teachers the space. I was doing a resilience session yesterday for year 6s. Told you about it, right?
Yeah.
They gave me a brief. I said, this is what I'm going to do. They were happy with it. After about 15 minutes, I realized the brief wasn't going to work because the kids wanted some space and they were talking about some stuff, right? And I thought, sod the content.
Yeah.
I'm going to give these kids where they're going, and let's go there where they want. Now I can do that because my content doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Teachers can't do that because what they do is, hang on a minute, a lot of the kids in here at the moment seem like they're emotionally struggling, right? And they're sort of acting out. One's being a little bit what we'd say is naughty. That one over there can't sit still. They can't go, forget the history lesson or the maths lesson. That's not what the kids need right now. They need some emotional regulation. So let's do that. They can't do that.
Yeah.
Because they have to get the maths done. Otherwise they're failing.
Yeah.
So what they have to do is remove the children one by one that are causing the problem and get rid of them. So the children are the problem, when actually the system is the problem.
Yep.
Right? Let's forget about maths for a minute and let's do what these children need. So I believe you'd do that by creating space and give some of the power and the trust back to teachers. Look, and you'll know this working with schools. I go to schools sometimes and they'll talk about their best practice and they go, oh, we'll do this. And it's amazing. And the kids love it. And the impact it has on them is huge. But we just have to stop doing it when Ofsted are here because they don't like it.
Yeah.
And that tells you everything you need to know.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's that thing. It's like I've got endless sympathy for teachers, really, because they are confined by a lot of different rules and regulations, and it's like, and I know that when I go in and teach, it's like one of the hardest parts about translating what I teach into to get teachers to teach it has been the fact that so much of what I teach comes from lived experience. I have lived experience with depression, I have lived experience with anxiety, I have lived experience with an eating disorder. I can, as I have professional experience with all of those things as well, but the lived experience part provides the core to it. And so anyone when I go in and do them, people are like, those sessions are so powerful. But if I teach a teacher to do those, that teacher, even if they have the lived experience, they have to keep a certain degree of distance, and they can't let that lived experience get in there. And it does give me a weirdly unfair advantage in terms of and which necessarily shouldn't be there. And we've got. So one of the things we're working on is getting into those modules that we do is actually having videos that the teachers can use where a person shares their lived experience, so that's still included in there, because that's the bit that connects. And it is a lot of the confines of within schools. It's like we have to do it this way, and you said it exactly right. Then it's like we've got to get through this maths lesson. So the only thing we can do is get rid of the so-called disruptive children. And really, like you said, that like earlier, they're not necessarily being disruptive. That's their way of dealing with the emotional load that they've got at that exact moment in time. Like some people, instead of being disruptive, go into selective mutism. Some people would go off to do a coping strategy in the toilets, or like after school. Like for me, it was food, was my big coping strategy, and that was my way of dealing with my emotions. But I was able to delay that emotional response until 4 p.m. or whatever. And it's like all of this is the display of what is going on, and not always a direct display. So like you said before, you were upset, but you couldn't show that in high school because crime was very stigmatized, especially amongst teenage boys. So yours actually got displayed as anger. And then people would be like, well, what's he angry about? Well, actually, you transmuted your emotion into anger because you needed a way for it to get out your system, and anger was more manly. Yeah, it is. But yeah, I like that. We've got a couple of questions from the chat, and then I'll have a couple more from me before we wrap this up, which I don't want to wrap it up, but we kind of have to. Where have they gone? The questions are in chat. So obviously you run men's and anyone who identifies as male events. Have you ever considered running trans mask only events? So the full context of the question says, has Josh ever considered doing a trans mask only event? It'd be awesome to see, as sometimes as a trans mask person early in their transition, coming into spaces marked as men only can be daunting.
Yeah, so that's why we're very clear that we say anybody that identifies as a man. And what I would say is we have quite a broad range of that when, at the sessions. It's not something that I have considered, but I certainly would consider if I had the time. And it would have to be led by somebody that I felt was comfortable in that experience as well, right? Because I think that would be important for the safety aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
But certainly something I could look at doing online, particularly as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a follow-up question from one of the other members of the community on that said, this makes me think wider. What about non-binary and trans people who do not feel good about the binary or men or women setups?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I've always been, so in any self-evaluation work, I don't even like using necessarily masculine and feminine ideals in the ways in which I self-reflect.
Yeah.
So and by the way, until we did this thing last in November, I'd never done anything. Everything that I did was for all genders all of the time.
Yeah.
But I have started to see the power in specific spaces.
Yeah.
And so people that are non-binary and stuff like that, I think a specific space for people like that, that identify in that way would be really, really useful too.
Yeah.
And I think it's about creating more spaces and having blended mixed spaces as well as both.
So I had a great conversation with my wife about this a few weeks back about why often men-only spaces come under criticism when women's-only spaces are often really encouraged. So you have women's-only gyms like gymophobics, right? And my wife, who's a big fan of equality, and is, despite the fact she's completely oblivious when guys flirt with her or come onto her and stuff. So she's also oblivious of sexism, but because she's the more successful one out of the two of us, she probably thinks sexism doesn't exist. I don't know, but she's like, well, I think that they should be able to, and I'm like, I actually think that we should be able to have specific spaces for specific audience as well. And why often men's events come under scrutiny about that is because historically men's events weren't so that men could have a space for men. They were created for the specific purpose of excluding women. So like men's only tea times, or tea times TEE, not TEA. So like golf tea times, and men's clubs back then were used to discriminate, whereas a woman's only gym is used as a way to protect a woman from like the type of advances and unwanted solicitations that that men might actually do in gyms because men are grotty. But at times, we're not all grotty. I'm not generalizing. I'm just playing fun. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I 100% also agree that in the true, because we talked before you came on today about the difference between equality and equity being everyone has equal access to everything, whereas equity being people have access to the things that they need. And I actually think men do need access to spaces with just men, because there is a certain way in which those emotions, like toxic masculinity, isn't just a what will other men think of us thing. It's a what will other women think of us, and and in a weird way, there are certain situations where men are willing to break down that sort of those toxic masculinity things and be more vulnerable with their emotions when there's not women about, and then people think of it as just this exclusionary thing. So it's an interesting topic. It's for sure. I don't think there is any other questions from that. Having a space on that like that online would allow people from all over the country and perhaps even abroad could take part. That is definitely something to think about. Yeah. Well, again, Josh does do things online as well. So Is there anything like, cause I'd like to make sure that if there's stuff that you really wanted to say, but my questions haven't led you in the direction of that, is there anything else that you want to add to this, whether it's related to anything we've talked about so far, or just if there's anything like, burning on the tip of your tongue that you want more people in the world to hear?
Not really, man. I always love your questions. I think we always have a decent conversation. So I'm good.
All right. Awesome. Right. So we've put a few links and stuff up in chat to your work, but for people who are going to listen back on audio later, where's the best place to find you?
On Instagram and TikTok, I'm Josh_FFW. And you can find all my stuff on my website, which is just joshconnolly.co.uk. That's
reminded me of something, actually, because Josh_FFW, the FFW standing for Freedom from Within. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
I've been meaning to ask you for a long time. What does that mean?
What, Freedom from Within?
Yeah.
It's the name of my company. So my company is called Freedom from Within. And it's just about turning ourselves within and saying, look, can we find freedom from turning and looking and doing the healing within? I don't really use it, to be honest with you, other than FFW on my
fair enough.
It's
the same as me. I'm Mindset by Dave, but I hardly ever talk about mindset anymore. I talk about mental health 100% of the time.
You evolve, don't you?
You do.
Evolve over time. So
It's just like I was a personal trainer at one point. It's like I was a musician at one point. It's like I still am all of those things for real in reality. But yeah, well, Josh, it's been absolutely fantastic. Been absolutely fantastic chatting with you, and everyone in chat and everyone who listens back to this in the podcast. I have to go and attend an in-person event before February, which gives me basically December and January or February itself to do it. So yeah, that's because I'm away for the rest, the tail end of this month, you say, and then I'm away again for the tail end of the following month because we had my 40th and my mum's 70th in the same year. So
wow.
So that's why I didn't. That's why it wasn't me being flaky and putting this weird goal of February on there. I was trying to make something that was soon enough to be like a deadline and distant enough to actually make it possible for me to do it.
Yeah.
But also, I'll have to try and sneak into that mailing list to get into that 48-hour pre-sale, So
yeah, I'll get you sorted, mate. Go. Yeah, I'll get you sorted. Don't worry. If you want to come, I'll get you sorted.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming over and spending time with us today. It's been absolutely great catching up with you, and I look forward to actually finally meeting you in person sometime between now and February.
Me too. Very much look forward to that.